So from like my email.
Right there, yeah.
Okay.
She sent it to you. How's that one? Just go back to go to your meeting. Open up another one.
Just go into Munico.
So where you can access that, or our website has them. Go to our website. Meeting list. Or, and the session meeting is 6/1.
Here.
Yeah.
Click on that.
You leave town?
How
Leave town?
Nope, I was here.
then
How about you guys? Pretty sure you
We,
either.
we went to
one
Page
down. That one.
on
Click on that.
Saturday. Come home yesterday
download
or
it.
Sunday.
Go back to your Zoom. And then present. Zoom.
My gonna a. Good morning,
Which one are you?
everyone.
Good morning, Commissioner.
There you go.
Get to the right one. Are you seeing an agenda on your side?
Yes, I am.
So you can see the agenda?
When the one you sent original notice work session, I couldn't open it. I don't know which program you sent to open it.
Okay. Yeah, it should have been just a Adobe PDF.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and proceed.
Okay.
We have everyone here.
We do.
Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Maryboy, and myself. It's I don't know what time it is.
Looks like I've got 9:06.
9. Okay.
All right. Let's see.
Well, give us the information on number one item.
So on your agenda today for your work session, you have the 3 items. You got the Canyonland Travel Management Plan. This will be presented by Nick. Then we'll go into some personnel policy updates. And then the final one would be the American Rescue Plan funding discussion. So with that, so look here. Let's see, let's turn it over to Nick. Nick, on your presentation of your Canyonlands Travel Management Plan.
You're gonna stand here, is this
Yeah.
mic on or whatnot? Well, this is for information purposes for you commissioners. The BLM signed their decision record for the Canyon Rims Travel Management Plan on May the 21st of this year. And you may recall that that plan covers roughly an area of 91,000 acres of BLM lands on Hatch Point and Schaefer Basin in northern San Juan County. Now, the decision selected alternative C, which results in 226.6 miles of roads that are open to vehicle travel and 46 miles that are closed. Now, those 46 miles that are closed represent 46 miles of road that are closed from the existing situation or the situation that was developed in the 2008 Resource Management Plan. And you may recall that San Juan County participated as a cooperating agency in the development of this plan. Now, the roads that were closed if the road no longer existed. It was being reclaimed naturally, so it was basically unnoticeable. It lacked connectivity or purpose. It may have been redundant with another road, or vehicle use may have negatively impacted cultural or natural resources. Now, the completion of this plan satisfies BLM's responsibilities mandated in the settlement agreement of January 2017 on travel management plans. And like I say, this was just for your information to let you know that the travel plan has been completed. Do you have any questions on that?
I have questions, Commissioner Grayos.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Adam.
Am I correct in assuming that this is a decision the BLM was charged to make by the court in a settlement agreement with Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance and other environmental organizations?
That's correct. This was the settlement agreement required BLM to revise their travel management plans from the 2008 RMPs.
Now, is the state of Utah a cooperating agent in this? And I'm assuming that they are. So did they have input on Alternative C?
They were a cooperating agency. As far as the state of Utah goes, it was Utah SITLA, as well as the Utah Public Lands Policy Coordinating Committee. And they participated in the development of the plan. So yes, they did have input on the various alternatives.
And were they in agreement with the decision that the BLM made?
I am not
knowledgeable
on what their position may be.
I think any road that the county claims in the county is shared with the state of Utah. They own a half interest in all roads that the county claims an interest in. And so I was just wondering if you had any information on what their input was. They generally look very skeptically at closing any roads. So I just wondered if.
I may add a little insight on that. The RS-2477 situation.
Yeah.
That was specifically stated that this plan would have no effect on any RS-2477 determinations, either presently or in the future.
And at some point in our meeting today, will we take an action on this, or because the BLM has already taken an action in their record of decision, you're just bringing this information to us to tell us what the result of the BLM's action was?
That's correct. Now, if the commission chooses to take an action, we can certainly do so.
Okay.
But I've not had anything for you to look at or a proposal.
Okay, that's all my questions, Commissioner Grayeyes.
Thank you. Mr. Nick, exact location? I'm not familiar with this, what you're talking about.
Did you say
Schaefer
location
Basin.
you had a question on?
Where it is, location, Schaefer Basin.
Yes, Hatch Point is in, basically, you'd consider that northern San Juan County, west of Highway 191. The two points of interest you may be familiar with on Hatch Point would be the Needles Overlook, as well as the Anticline Overlook. Now the Hatch Point area also includes the Cane Creek area within this travel management plan. And the Schaefer Basin area is right on the very north boundary of the county, and that includes Dead Horse Point State Park, which of course was not, since it's state land, it was not impacted by this travel management plan. The travel management plan pertains only to roads on BLM lands.
Okay. It's before you get to LaSalle.
So
That
where are we
road's in-
at, Nick? You see on there?
It's about where that 191.
Yes,
Yes,
you might
there's a
see
road
the
that goes up.
junction, the LaSalle Junction. It would be
South.
west of that and across Hatch Canyon there, which is prominent. So the Hatch Point area is the high mesa area between Hatch Canyon and the Lockhart Basin area to the west.
Is that it right there?
Pardon me?
Is that it right
Well,
That's Hatch Canyon.
it's a little south
with your
I think,
pointer.
Where you're at.
there? Does that help? So you got Wilson Arch, Needles Overlook.
I don't see the map on.
Can you see the map on your screen, Commissioner Grice?
Nope. No.
Nothing.
Nope.
How's that? Can you see it now?
There you go. Right.
Okay, we're just trying to find it. So here's your going to LaSalle. You're in your
There's a road that takes you out to Needles Overlook. It's south of the junction, LaSalle Junction. Yeah.
right there.
Well,
A little farther
Little further
south,
south,
Mac.
yeah.
I don't know if that road's going to
Okay,
show up very
it's
prominently.
not showing up on there, but that's the general area, Mac, right
So
there.
there's Needles.
Yep. And see the road up on top here? That's the road out to Anticline Overlook.
Okay.
Schaefer Basin on that particular photo includes that area of the potash settling ponds, which are prominent on this aerial photo.
Yeah.
Schaefer Basin would be to the west of that and would join the boundary of Canyonlands National Park and also be below the Dead Horse Point State Park.
Okay. So 91,000 acres in size.
Of BLM. I think there's roughly 102,000 acres of total with state and other lands within that. But this plan pertains only to the 91,000 acres of BLM lands.
So it's a pretty big swath.
See, Commissioner Adams, you're familiar with that turnoff. Is that roughly 20 miles or so north of Monticello, where you turn off to?
Mile post 93.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 25 miles.
25. Okay.
25 miles north of
Monticello.
Monticello, where the turnoff is. It's not that. What 211 goes down to Dead Horse or go down to Newspaper Rock, so it's north of that, and it's south of Wilson Arch, so it's right about where your cursor thing is. Yeah, there it is.
Right there,
138.
That 133?
Or 133. I mean, yeah, that's the road that takes you out to Anticline Overlook. Yep.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
You know where it is now, Willie?
Yeah. Uh-huh. So the system is going to be improved or just a management plan?
I didn't quite understand your question, Commissioner. When you say improved, what are you referring to?
The roads.
But we're talking about the road.
There's no plan in this decision to improve any of those roads. They would be in the existing condition. And this, the total roads in this area include both the Class B, the Bravo roads, as well as the D, Class Delta roads.
Okay. So what's is that Sitla or Southern Utah Alliance? Is that, have they responded to the management plan?
I'm sure SUA had comments on the management plan during the draft. I don't know what their current position is.
Wouldn't you be interested in pursuing a position from them?
Willie, they were part of the lawsuit. They were part of the settlement agreement that happened in Richfield. That's why this agreement came about, is because SUA was part of the lawsuit that sued the BLM.
So I assume the ways being talked about, it's okay with them at this time.
Well, what happens? The BLM got with all the parties, the county, the state, the people that were suing, and they had meetings and came to some kind of a cooperative agreement. Maybe it didn't satisfy everybody, but in the end, the BLM made a decision. Now, if somebody doesn't like the decision they made, I guess they could, the party that doesn't like it could file an appeal of some kind to the decision that the BLM has made. But the BLM was tasked with making the decision. It wasn't the county, it wasn't the state, it wasn't Southern Utah Wilderness. All of those people were involved in giving comments to the BLM, and then the BLM took those comments and made a decision. They decided to close 46 miles of road, and that alternative, which was alternative C, had 226.6 miles of roads that were left open. Nick's just giving us a report on the final decision that the BLM made. The decision has been made. If somebody doesn't like it, then they can file an appeal, I believe.
That's correct on the appeals. And I think the alternative C was a reasonable, it was considered to be the balanced alternative. And I consider that decision that they have to be reasonable with the roads they left open as well as the roads that they closed.
So all of those parties would have been active in finalizing that decision, right? It wouldn't have been BLM just
They gave comments.
on their own.
No.
Yeah, it would have been a concerted effort.
Everybody gave input as well as the public.
Yes.
There were
Did we give
a few
comment?
public, pardon me?
Did we give comment as a county?
We did.
Okay.
We did.
Okay.
So this is how the decisions are made with the Forest Service and the BLM. They ask cooperating agencies, which the county is one, to submit comments. So when Nick brings a letter to the county commission saying this is the comment that I've drafted for the county,
a receipt on a credit card expenditure, then they need to fill out a missing receipt form. So there's some justification or more responsibility placed back on the card user. What happens if they lose a card? But also more importantly is the sales tax provisions in this is credit card utilization is good in the sense that you can regulate your credit cards. You can have more monitor and control over credit card expenditure. As this policy mentions, there are specific codes that the credit card company can place on cards so that you can't go out and spend and use your credit card on certain purchases. It'll decline your card based on those codes that are assigned to your cards. Obviously, where it has a credit card limit, that limit typically in here is kind of dependent upon the amount of spend on here, but about $5,000 is everybody's max credit card on here. But I also like on here the push for sales tax. These cards obviously were tax exempt. We're a tax exempt entity, and people that are using the cards should be pushing for that tax exemption on those purchases. You can do that pretty much through every vendor other than hotels. Hotels are the ones in the state of Utah that we get a reimbursement back on the tax. But for the most part, our employees should be working to make sure that those purchases are set up for non-exempt purchases. Also in here, we've been having a hard time just getting everybody to come into compliance when we need to reconcile and turn in receipts on those credit cards. So here kind of has some better rules to aid our employees in so that they understand and know when the expectation is to get the cards and the receipts back down to the clerk auditor's office. That allows me time to go through the expenses on there and make sure we have everything documented. Say, for example, if there's a food purchase on a credit card, we want to know what that food purchase was for. Me as a taxpayer, I want to know as well, was that for a staff meeting? Was it training, or was it you just took somebody out to lunch? We want to know and make sure that we have that represented on the receipt. So each expenditure on our credit cards is accounted for. And then also on here, it puts the responsibility back not only to the individual user, but also the department head to kind of help make sure they're overseeing those credit cards as well. On here, when I looked at the total amount of cards that the county has right now, we have 22 open accounts. So it's 22 cards that are around the county. Typically, it's your department heads that have those cards. Some heavy utilized cards holders or staff will also have a card. Say, for example, the library, they use the credit card a lot to purchase books. Same with the deputy director there at the library services. So that would count as 2 cards just for the library. And then kind of each department kind of weighs in similar to the library. But when I was looking at expenditures, just to kind of give you an idea of how much on the transaction side of it, so I kind of pulled a report between the last cycle for May, or it'd be kind of a end of March, all of April, and the first part of May. On there, our transactions for that month were around $52,000, and of that, we had about $200 on sales tax that were collected on that. So that's pretty good amount. Where for basically that $52,000, we only had that $224 on tax. That's pretty good, shows good usage, but yet we're still spending tax on our credit card purchases. And so we need to refine it. This policy will kind of help give some guidance to our employees throughout the county as well of what they can do and that expectation to work with vendors. You know, a lot of times we'll see a tax if our department heads go into and purchase items at a Walmart in Colorado. Obviously, we're not tax exempt in Colorado, only here in Utah. And so the applicable tax there it makes sense. So we look at just those areas like that to just kind of monitor and tighten our belts where we can and have those controls where needed. And so I would say it's not out of control, but I think this policy will actually help so that everybody understands the expectations of where we're coming out as county staff. Any questions with that?
No misuse, huh? Anywhere?
No, it's pretty hard to misuse a county credit card where we have the specific codes on there that'll give you a denial, but then where we're also looking at them and making sure that those purchases are valid. Now, every once in a while, and I've seen this is kind of common, not common, but every once in a while you'll have this happen is, you know, an employee will use a county credit card thinking it was their own credit card. And so you may have times like that where the employee will have to reimburse the county for that expenditure, but I don't see that a lot. What I see probably more of is you're missing receipts. And so because of that, you kind of have that language in here that too often turning in that missing and lost receipt form could aid into some disciplinary action. We want to make sure that we're able to curb that, but we do understand sometimes you do not have the receipt. I remember one time I purchased, it was that meeting down in Tisno's Post where we had signed the IGA with the Navajo Nation. I purchased some donuts to take down there to that event. I didn't have that receipt, and so I turned in that missing receipt form. So I had the accountability of why I used that credit card and justification of the expenditure. And so we want our employees to do that same thing. And so, but credit cards we know that we monitor them pretty closely around here.
Okay.
These are the credit card.
Sounds
And
good.
so when you look at the difference in the past between a credit card and an account, oftentimes in the past we would create an account like at Napa or Ace Hardware and just allow our employees to go in and purchase off an account. All they would have to do is just go get the item and sign their name. So less accountability on that, especially if it was an employee that was terminated, they could go in and put anything on the account at any time. And so those are a little bit more troublesome. With county credit cards, you can actually control that. You can stop that fraudulent spend, or you can terminate credit cards upon termination. Makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah. Any question?
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Adam.
I think credit card policy is one that if you don't monitor it, it can get out of control. I know other counties that have had difficulties with number of people that have credit cards that are county credit cards. And so I didn't see any place on here, and I don't know if we want to do it, but put a limit on the number of credit cards. I'm thinking out loud and not necessarily saying we should or shouldn't, but I wonder if we ought to only allow one credit card per department. Say the department head might have a credit card, but not allow other individuals within that department to have credit cards, multiple credit cards for one department. I don't know if that's something that we ought to consider. We have a reimbursement policy for travel and those kind of things where if you travel, you can charge something to your own credit card and then fill out a reimbursement form with the clerk's office for your travel expenses. So, so that's a fairly easy process to follow if if we get the reimbursement made within the time that the credit card invoice may come back to that personal individual. But I think we ought to really be careful about how many credit cards we have out and some kind of a justification for more than one credit card in a department. I think really that, if somebody wants to make a purchase in a department, they can come to Mac, and he certainly could make an arrangement somehow to, if needs be, to use his credit card anyway. I think this is a good policy. I think this will tighten the belt a little bit and not allow, it just, if somebody knows that their credit card is being checked, they're going to be less likely to use that credit card inappropriately. And so I'm glad we're coming up with a credit card policy. I really certainly didn't know that we had that many credit cards out in the county, so that was a little bit alarming to me. Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other comments or question?
Matt,
Yeah, Commissioner.
Mr. Maryboy.
thank you, Mr. Chair, and members and staff of the Brevard County. Matt, have we had any problem yet, or have we ever had any other problem with the credit cards? If there is, I would say that Bruce is right. Maybe we need to make some changes. If not, then I sure hate to change the wheel on the wagon when it's not even broken. So, are we having any problems with that credit cards right now?
I think the only problems that we have, it's not necessarily a utilization of the cards. For the most part, you do have, on the smaller scale of the departments, you'll have one card assigned to the department director, but then you get some of our departments that are heavily utilized based off of function. Say, for example, economic development, you have the director there having one, and then you'll have the economic developer, he'll have one, and then the tourism, where she goes out, they do two different functions. They're out and about in the community and have the expenditures that coincide with that. Our sheriff's office, you have multiple credit cards, one for corrections, one for dispatch, those type of functions. And so that's kind of where we get into the heavy utilization. But as far as any outside issues, I'm not aware of. I haven't been here long enough. I haven't seen any since I've been here, other than the fact that you do, as we look at some of the expenditures, see some taxes being applied. And so this policy kind of stipulates in there that county employees need to make sure that taxes aren't being applied. And it's a little bit more difficult if you work on a reimbursement and you're using your own credit card and you go up to that company and say, hey, I need to get the taxes deferred. They'll be, well, why? You're putting this on your personal card. How can you justify, having the taxes deferred on that purchase? And that's kind of the whole premise behind the state card, is you can get those taxes deferred. It shows that it's a corporate non-exempt account on their side of it. Makes it a little bit easier, or there's forms that we can get for those purchases with that. And so it helps with that. But I would say overall, there's not an abuse of it, but it's just making sure that we do have the policy in place so that if there was something, when we do mention that, hey, you need to go and work with these vendors to take off the taxes, you're using a company account, a Utah, state of Utah account in general, get the taxes deferred, then we have a mechanism there that we can point to say, well, it's our policy that taxes aren't applied here.
This doesn't actually change the existing credit card policy. It just puts it in writing so that everybody has access to it and can see what that policy is.
And then with this also, we'll have the employees and their department head sign. It's something that you don't see on here, so that they acknowledge and have read the county credit card policy when they accept the card itself. So they understand that it'll be heavily regulated as well.
Okay. Well, I'm glad this is for the work session purpose only. I think we have time to maybe do a little survey and work talk among ourselves to see where we need to be and what we need to do. And it's all a good idea to put something together. But surprisingly, that it sounds like we never had that policy in place. And maybe we need to develop a policy that works for everybody else. And I don't know who exactly was this scared to, but I think we're all in the same boat, and we need to make sure that everybody does the rowing to make it across without focusing on one individual or one group of people. If it's working good for them and if it helps the county, then we shouldn't try to tinker at it with anything. So again, it's a work session to where, but the commission does have a right if they were to make this into an action item. But at this point in time, for informational purposes, I think the three commissioners, the three of us, we need to review it and see if it's necessary to do it. It sounds like it is important to put something in place only because some other counties are going into abuse. But I've always had confidence in our staff that they do a good job, and it sounds like they're doing it. And we have all those availability of cards out there, but none of them has been abused yet. So again, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
So you'll see these policies as we bring them to you. They are pretty much informational only right now. We'll make your adjustments. I like that limit in department how many cards are out there to just as a control mechanism, and we can certainly add that. That makes sense on there as well. I think the biggest concern that I have is, as employees are hired on, especially department heads, and they don't have their credit card, there's been purchases on my card here at the county, and I understand the policy and make sure that those purchases are within kind of my head, a policy of what I would hold everybody to, which is what you're seeing now. But those employees that we hire on, they wouldn't have that understanding yet with the policy, and so it's making sure that everybody knows kind of those marching orders that we're using as a policy here. And so we'll definitely make those changes, those comments on here that kind of help drive this policy and bring it back as a formal policy for you to adopt in a county ordinance here in the next couple meetings. Which kind of leads us into that next one, the gifts and award policy. We presented this to you in a commission meeting. Then I'll let Anne Marie kind of.
So we presented this in the commission meeting. There just seemed to be some questions on it, so it's more appropriate here, I think, in the work session. The biggest question was, I think, letting the departments decide as far as like retirement, how much they can give, and what they want to do for that employee. And the policy is out there not to say you can't do something for your employee, but just to put a cap on the number of dollars that can be spent on each employee, so that we're not spending, 1,000 on one and 50 on the other. It caps it at what we can spend and kind of gives a guidance as to where the department heads can go with that retirement gift.
And this policy here is more about reining that in, kind of like Anne Marie had mentioned. We've had departments that have been across the board in various ways. You get those, and I mentioned this in commission meeting. You get these departments that have a lucrative budget. They can afford to spend, up to that $1,000 on a retirement gift, whereas some of these other departments in a general fund, they're restricted to their budget and they don't have that flexibility to go outside of this. And so I've seen probably as several employees have retired here within the last year and a half, this has varied across departments. And so this is an effort to get everybody at the same playing field, the same level, and as well as for those people that are retiring, that expectation is there. It's written in a policy so that they know what that gift is, and it kind of, this will help kind of avoid the over expenditure in retirement gifts. There was one employee that we had, I think we paid him $200 as a retirement gift, but then several departments went in and purchased lunch for him as well. So now you got the retirement gift, plus you got a taxpayer lunch, another taxpayer lunch. And so that could easily reach up to $500. And that's just not right. That's not fair for taxpayers. To be spending that much on retirement. We'll continue to leave this, and I think this is Commissioner Gray Eyes, your comments last time, or it should be up to the individual. We'll still work with the department heads and the individuals of what they want on here, but this just gives that ceiling that they cannot go past on those amounts. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Could be.
Okay. Any other questions and concerns on this one?
No.
Okay. You'll see more of these policies come to you as we, our policies here have always kind of worried me. We'll try to bring multiple of these back to the work sessions as right now, all of our personnel policies are all one combined and very narrow. We've gotten in trouble because of some of the narrowness with them. And so you'll see more of these as Anne Marie is here, now that we can just kind of give that guidance and oversight as we address our policies. We'll continue to bring them forward to you throughout this next year to get everything so that we're in compliance not only with state code, but also that we're informing our employees correctly.
I have a comment to make, Commissioner Gray Eyes.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Adam.
I'm thinking about this a little bit, and I'm just wondering out loud, Mac. You have a person that retires that came to you a few years and only put in 5 years with the county. Then you got some people that may have stayed with the county for 30 years. Where's the equity in giving what's the maximum?
So 300 is the max, and it's
300
figured out at $10 per year for every year of service over 5 years.
30
So
years.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if we're giving a $300 gift to a guy who was with us 5 years compared to a guy that was with us
so
for
at
30 years.
At
But you've
5
already
years,
worked
the
that.
cap
Okay.
would be $50, and at
Okay,
30
so
years,
it's
the cap would be 300.
10 years per,
You know, you got
per year.
you got
service.
some of these people that have been pretty loyal to the county and stayed with them a long time. And, working for the county doesn't mean that you get a lot of praise and thank yous from the public. Um, Usually you get a little abuse once in a while and
Probably more
have,
so.
have to put up with a little of, I don't know.
And these
I
are
just want to be fair to those people that stay with us for a long time. We're going to have people that retire with over 30 years.
Yes.
You know, I know we get, so do
So
we
we're
give the
trying
guy
to
that
find-
stayed with us 40 years? Do we give him the same as the guy that stayed with us 20?
and that's where we're trying to find the balance between
Yeah.
this is definitely not the best policy in the state, but it's definitely not the worst either.
Yeah.
So it's kind of somewhere in the middle there. And we don't want to break the taxpayers by
No,
saying we're going to pay a bunch out. So
It just,
that's where the cap came.
yeah, just a fairness issue. You know, you got, you know, some people that spend a lot of time and do a lot of good for the county. I just hope we appreciate them enough when they retire. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mirabel, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that you direct our administrator, Mr. Adams, Commissioner Adams, has brought up some really good points, and to me, I've always said, you know, we're the staff are the one that makes us who we are, and we do appreciate that. And it sounds like we've been neglecting some of the policies that were available and we could have utilized, and now coming into our county that we need to pursue with that. So I would ask you to maybe develop a day, sort of like a work session, to come through the policies that are pressing. Like we have retirements, we have people that are going to be retiring here. How do we deal, and where and who are we dealing with? And what do we need to do? I think those should be set aside, and all of the recommendation that Bruce has come up with, we can insert a lot of those, and it does make some sense, you know, for some people. We lost some people that worked for us for many, many years. They were very, very loyal and dedicated. They put in the years that they have. I know that we let somebody go just to let him go with whatever he had, which was the only thing he had was an iPad, and it was an obsoleted iPad, and he was happy with it. We let him go, and we gave him the old iPad. I think we need to make it to where it's more memorable for the family and the loved ones, and keep them going, and maybe an encouragement on the rest of the workers that we have to develop those things. So put those in place, and let's see if we can maybe sort out. And you know, I keep hearing the counties. Well, great. Well, that's their county. This is our county. We have a separate, open-minded commissioner that's willing to deal with something new and to develop something good for our county and for our people. So with that, I think we need to do something with our administrator and get something in place to where we don't need to worry about it. And any other issues that should come to the administrator, and he's the one that makes a comment personally to either one of us, or openly in an open meeting as a concern for our understanding. If we can develop that, and we have a working mechanism that will work for everybody else. And once again, let's see if we can put something in place. And that's going to work for the people. That's going to benefit our employers, our staff, the more they feel comfortable, the more they're going to produce, and the more they enjoy their work, and the more they're going to do whatever they can to help us. So I would recommend that, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Perfect. I agree.
Yeah.
So
Me too. Bring
we'll
them to the work
definitely
session
do
and
that.
we'll-
So I think one of them that I do, just kind of going off of Commissioner Adams mentioning in there. So we've got in here that an employee with a minimum of 5 years of service, that they'll get up to $10 per year of service, and then not to exceed that 300. Just in fairness, we do have employees that have exceeded that 30 years, and so maybe we bump that up to $400 so that those employees that are nearing, I mean, we do have those that are out there that are 37 years. Why penalize them when they've stuck it with us that long? And so I think we can up that to that not exceed, reflective of that fact. I think it's, and then Commissioner Marable, we do have in here that they can accept gifts in lieu of the check. And so we'll add that. I appreciate your comments on that. Just make sure that we have that in there so that we're definitely have a benefit for our employees there. So we'll definitely do it.
We would never have anybody that would need to go beyond 40, would we? 400.
It may happen. I don't know.
I'm just,
I mean,
I don't want to limit ourselves. I'm just wondering if we
We
I'm
can
just
put
set a
wondering
limit
if we
of five.
just if
we
we
can
just
put an
set
exception in here.
we just set the cap at $10 per year, regardless of the number of years of
Yeah,
service.
yeah, that'd be okay.
That would be easier.
Yeah,
So
Yeah, good
cap to
suggestion.
up to $10 per year
Good idea.
per year of service.
We'll make those.
Greater than 5.
We'll make those
and
adjustments.
if you have a really rough year, you get a year and a half towards your gift.
I mean, how do you monitor that? It's like you have so many HR complaints.
And
Then
decide who has a rough year.
I'm gonna have a lot of rough years. You know?
Totally.
Thanks, commissioners.
Okay. No further discussion. We'll go to the next one.
Okay, the next one is the big one. So the county stands to receive $2,973,400 for the American Recovery Act. So on the commission meeting today, in our consent agenda, you have a ratification of the agreement that I sent off to the U.S. Treasury, committing or asking for those funds and committing that we would abide by the Treasury Department's rules and guidelines that they set forth with this Rescue Plan Act. So we have requested those funds to come in. It takes, according to their confirmation email of that being sent, it takes about 4 days for them to work through, make sure we have everything in there. But we pretty much have had everything ready for a while now. It's just a matter of going on and submitting the request. And so as those funds come in, I just wanted to put this before you, not necessarily as a decision, just mostly as a discussion. There's a lot of funds that are out there right now available for grants and for awards. And so to me, it's just taking a breath and knowing that these funds are there. It was, for me, we wanted to get them into our account because once they're into our account, they can bear interest, so we can receive the interest on there. And according to the Treasury guidance, we don't have to pay back that interest. And so it's something that is revenue that we gain just by having it in our account. And then I'll work with Glennis, the treasurer, to see how best to hold those funds, whether we keep them in our Zions bank account or a Utah TIF account. and so it just depends on kind of our expenditure, our spend down on this plan. But in here, you kind of see the key dates that are important to keep in mind. Obviously, that treasury portal is open. We've requested the funds. They're allowing on this document that you're viewing now, as July 9th is the deadline to submit comments regarding this final rule and guidance document. August 31st, 2021 is the deadline to counties to submit the first interim report. So know that there's a lot of reports that are required in here. So you've got August, then you've got October, another deadline to submit the first quarterly project and expenditure report. In the end, you've got December 2024. The funds must be incurred and obligated. So they've got to be under contract or incurred by that date. If they are obligated in a contract, then those funds could then exceed and go up until December 31st, 2026. So it allows for longer term contracts. So remember, if we're at 2.9 million, I'll just round it to 2.9. There's not a lot of money. It'd be pretty hard to get a contract that goes out to 2026, but you never know. It kind of depends on what you guys look at. I think this is more for the bigger counties that have multiple millions of dollars. We're pretty small compared to what like a Salt Lake County, Utah County is receiving in their amount. So on here, as you look at what the money can be spent on, it's these 5 items that you're viewing now. You've got support public health response, address negative economic impacts, replace public sector revenue loss, premium pay for essential workers, and then water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And so those are the 5 items that this money can be spent on. And then it gets into, and the reason I appreciate this report, we were all waiting on this report to come out, so that it kind of helps provide a little additional guidance to the counties on what it means. Break it down a little bit further for the county. And so they go through and kind of give a better explanation of what it's anticipated the funds to be used for. And they give some examples in here as well. So when you look at helping others out that have been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, on here, it's whether it be for public health expenses or economic investments, counties have broad flexibility if the county can demonstrate, and that's a key word, if the county can demonstrate that these activities support public health response and that recipients of the recovery funds have experienced economic harm from the pandemic. So there's a proof test that qualifies for these funds on an economic investment or public health expenditure. And then it kind of breaks it down a little bit further on that in the fact that you have greater flexibility for qualified census tracts. And this is typically an area that has a lower median income, which obviously several areas of the county will qualify for that. It gets into kind of a definition, the difference between CARES Act and the American Recovery Act funds, because they've seen some expenditures with the CARES Act funds. It was a little bit broader in certain instances. Say, for example, here we were able to give a bonus to employees throughout the county that had kind of, how in my mind, touched COVID. So any of our public employees that dealt with the public that could have contracted COVID in any of our departments throughout the county. Here, they're restricting it a little bit further to where these employees can be only those employees with public safety, public health, healthcare, human services, and similar employees to the extent that their services are devoted to mitigating and responding to COVID-19. So it gets a little bit more specific, so you just can't go across the board and nonchalantly just give these funds to everybody. You pretty much have to be able to demonstrate that they've mitigated and responded to COVID-19. And so a little bit more tightening of that. On here, when you get into the use, and this is probably one of them that we would highlight the most and try for first, is just making sure that we have the ability to recoup lost revenue in the county. As our tax revenue has been down, this kind of goes through and allows you a little bit more broader discretion with the funds. So say, for example, if you can demonstrate a lost revenue for TRT, which we can show where we lost revenue in our transient room tax that we received during COVID period. It took a nosedive for everyone throughout the state for a while. And as it rebounds back, we're able to show that difference in there and then recoup and use those funds to recoup for that lost revenue. But then it kind of unrestricts the funds to where you can use those funds in eligible required areas, your public health response, negative economic impacts, premium pay for your water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So it kind of opens it up a little bit more. So I like that, but it's basically you're replenishing your own general fund, and then you can use those funds in that general fund. But what you cannot do is use those funds to place it back into rainy day or reserve funds or debt service payments. And that was initially my knee jerk when I heard this. I was like, well, this will be nice because we'll be able to put that money back into our savings where we took it out of. But here on there, and it's bolded in their treasury note that lost revenue cannot be used to recoup rainy day or reserve funds, which is unfortunate, but it still allows for those expenditures in the general fund to make up for some of that money that we lost and would have had otherwise. And so what in here, and as a question that I have is, if you remember right before COVID, all you commissioners had gone through a truth in taxation and you set an approved rate that you were going to go out, increase the taxes and receive a revenue. And we had that revenue in there stated in public records, stated in our public hearing for that tax increase. Do we take, and this is the question that we have, do we take that anticipated revenue, which we had approved or you had approved of, and is that our ceiling? Is that where we had anticipated that revenue? And then when COVID hit, we announced to everybody that, okay, wait, there's no way at this time that we can increase taxes. And so we chose not to take that rate, that higher rate in June. And so we're looking at that as kind of our height, where we should have received that revenue and we couldn't because COVID and that impact of COVID. And so our revenue numbers were still working out. There's definitely been that loss in general fund. When we look at the overall picture, we're trying to extrapolate because we received grants in multiple departments. Those funds, that grant revenue kind of inflates our revenue that we received last year. And so we've got to go out and pull out all of the COVID grant funds to make sure we're not overinflating what our actual revenue was off of taxes received or other transfers to our funds. And so we're still going through that. I have our clerk auditor department looking through all of those funds to be able to pull that information out. I'll continue to go on here. Is there any questions up to that point?
Yeah, I've got a question, Commissioner Gray Eyes.
Go ahead.
I noticed at the very beginning, at the bottom of page 7, it talked about public land counties receiving 1.5 billion in additional federal funds. Is that going to be in addition to the 2.9 that we get, or is that where do we get the 2.9?
So my understanding, the 2.9 was based off of the formula that was created. I'll have to look into the public lands side of it. All I know is that the Treasury set the amounts for the county.
Yeah.
We just pulled it from what
Yeah.
the Treasury had set on there. But your question is true. We are a public land county, and I think a lot of state of Utah is as well.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I don't know if that goes right to the state of Utah,
Right.
which is
Or comes to the county.
kind of what I thought, what I think. 2.9 isn't a lot of money. I mean,
No.
it's a lot of money, but in the realm of what was doled out, it's 61.5 billion
Yeah.
has been distributed throughout. So I'm hoping that formula has already worked that into the place, but
Yeah.
I'll look and see. I just took.
Okay.
It doesn't show the formula behind the amount on their website, but I'll look into that to try to figure that out.
Well, it just says this specific interim rule and related guidance covers the 61.5 billion in direct federal aid to America counties. Later this year, Treasury will release a separate guidance for 1.5 billion in additional federal aid for public land counties. So I think that's an additional amount that's going to come to public land counties, Mac, but I could be wrong.
I maybe I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
We're like, as soon as the information gets here, we
Yeah.
try to figure it out of what they're doing and what they're giving.
Well, I know the state legislature met in May to
2 weeks ago.
decide 2 weeks ago to decide what to do with the 1.6 billion dollars that is coming to the state of Utah
Mhm.
and going to be administered by the state legislature. And I haven't heard officially, but I've heard kind of backroom talk that maybe counties ought to keep a hold of the direct money that comes to them, because the state legislature may make available matching funds from the 1.6 that they're getting that could go to counties if they have matching funds to access. So if we had 2.9 million and we didn't spend it right away, and the legislature appropriated money and said, hey, we'll give a match, 1-to-1 match, or maybe even more than that, maybe we ought to not get in a hurry to spend this 2.9 so that we can use it as a match and maybe get an additional 2.9 or something like that from the state of Utah if we have the match. I don't understand it. I'm just kind of repeating some of the things that I heard at the conference in Layton, and I think the state legislature is going to have to deal with that within the next 12 months, the 1.6 billion. So anyway, those are just my crazy thoughts.
Agreed. Not that they're crazy thoughts, just that it's a crazy process.
Well,
and
yeah,
everybody's
there just may
trying
be
to
a lot more
understand
money
it.
coming
And that's
to San Juan County because we're a public lands county, and we may have some money that we can match from money given to the state legislature.
absolutely wholeheartedly, and kind of the advice that Commissioner Gray Eyes had mentioned is, let's develop a spending plan. Before we do anything, let's make sure that we have a pretty good common footprint of where we want to take this and what we want to do with the funds. And it to this 2.9 million.
Well, the other thing, Mac, is I think we ought to consider in our long range planning and spending some of this money. I know San Juan School District just gave a 6% in salary increase to all of their employees in the school district, and we haven't given a cost of living or any kind of raise to any of our employees for the past 2 years, almost 2.5 years. And so, is there some way? I noticed up there it talked about spending some of this money on people that were involved in the health, safety, and welfare of our county citizens. That's almost every employee we've got. There really isn't hardly any employees in I'd hate to name, who isn't involved in the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. So I don't know. These are just some things that I would like to consider anyway.
I agree, and that's one of the things that we looked at. So our employees are very much aware of the fact that the school district, that was kind of in the newspaper headlines, 6%, and it did not go well with some of our department employees. It caused some chaos for department heads out there, with their employees seeing that, and the employees turned around to them and asked when's the county going to do theirs, or better yet, what's the county plan on getting increases to the employees. And so it's definitely on the forefront. It's getting, for us in the HR level, it's getting harder and harder for us to recruit for and keep staff when surrounding here is paying more, and you have this going on. I mean, you can go into to Moab and work at McDonald's making $15 to $17 an hour, and here that's more than a lot of our employees.
And then they get the fringe benefit, all you can eat, don't
Absolutely, one meal a day. And so you laugh, but it's the benefits, and the hardships of being in a rural area, and then you have kind of these things that kick everything out of balance. And that one with the school district, you've got mechanics and CDL drivers, which our employees qualify for, open positions that now pay a lot more than what we're paying, and we will lose employees if we don't reverse course and try to figure out something. And so that kind of goes back into that lost revenue, as you're able to use these funds for that and project it out. So remember, this is not just a single year. You can project those funds out for 2024 up until it. So you've got 2022, 2023, 2024. So that gives you 3 years of potential money that you can set aside just for employees like that. And so we'll definitely work on that as well. Another one in here that it mentioned is rehiring local staff to pre-pandemic levels. If you remember right, we chose not to hire back, one of our maintenance staff. It was one of those things where we're like, hey, let's not hire that position right now. Let's save the funds. And that specifically on 8 allows for you to hire that position back. It was pre-pandemic. And so you would be able to pay for that. The hard part, and one of the things to always keep in mind, is what happens after 2024. Is it sustainable? And so just a word of caution out there. You still have to do those things that are sustainable. Although you can use these funds, for these recovery, rehiring, you've just got to make sure that it's sustainable on a projected revenue basis, or in the future you will be looking at the tax increase that you were able to get. But hopefully by then, 2024, you're a little bit more on stable ground than we are right now during COVID. Kind of continuing on, it breaks it down into when you get into supporting the health care response back into the public, where you can use the funds for the prevention and mitigation. And this is one of the things that I'd like to point out that we have issues right now is ventilation improvements in our public facilities. And we've got several of our air conditioners, our boiler systems all on a failure here in this admin building. Several other buildings are like this. We can use those funds to help with that ventilation improvement, which is key to making sure you're operating a clean and safe environment, especially for our public facilities. When you get into behavioral and mental health services, you see the state also, and I appreciate Commissioner Adams' comments that the state will also ask for a county match with these funds. And so to be cautious and, hold off on expending the funds in anticipation that the state is going to request us to match a portion of these offerings that they have, it makes sense to just kind of hold off to see what they're going to do at a state level with substance abuse, mental health, because we would be able to use our funds if the state doesn't come forward with theirs. The state's been really good about offering funds for these systems already, but it allows us to kind of work with that if the state doesn't come to fruition, especially with needs. As you look at coming out of COVID, we anticipate that the need will increase with mental health, substance abuse, things like that in the healthcare industry that we need to be prepared for. And time will really show that as people come back more out to work and your schools open up. And typically that's where you see a lot of the issues coming, manifesting is through the school system. So we'll be able to have that there as well. Kind of getting a little bit further down into here, the negative economic impacts. Obviously, so with these as well, you've got to think of our staff level and the capability and capacity that staff have to do some of these. When you look at food assistance, rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, counseling, legal aid to prevent eviction of homeless, cash assistance, emergency assistance for burials, home repairs and weatherization needs, internet access, job training. Those are something that will definitely take a lot of staff time to implement. The loans and grants, I like that fact because there's nothing in here that really states what you do with the loan revenue after the loan is issued. If you place an interest rate on the loan, say at 1%, what happens when those loans are paid back? Does the county get to keep those funds? Do we get to keep interest earned on funds? Doesn't really get into that issue, and I would imagine that the state treasurer will be kind of all over that and give further guidance, but it doesn't so far. Right up front, it allows you to issue loans and or grants or in-kind assistance back out to the small businesses or businesses throughout the county to kind of help them out. Aid to impacted industries. Obviously, we have the tourism, so there is the potential that we can turn around and help out a majority of our businesses throughout the county, which are that as well. The hard part is making sure that we're not double or triple tapping the same type of grant or loan or a fund that's out there that the state is doing. You're going to see a lot of money being spent through grants and offerings through the Governor's Office of Economic Development, as well as the other associations throughout, associations of governments. They'll be on that as well. And so we just want to make sure that if somebody else is doing it, there's not necessarily a need for us to be doing the same thing. For example, the PPE provisions of masks, things like that. If they can get it somewhere else, it doesn't make sense for us to have the same type of grant offering. It just taxes staff if they can get the funds somewhere else. And so that's kind of what we're looking at in that aspect of it. So it kind of gets into economic relief, which is good, definitely needed. But I know that there's definitely a lot of economic relief that's out there that's going to be given as well. So it's not like we have to keep all of our money for that. One of the things that I've talked to staff about on the economic development side is just making sure that we have our toolbox so that we're able to help our businesses here in the county understand exactly where programs are being offered, and then we'll be able to help assist them through any applications or point the direction of who's offering what type of grant, what type of services out there, so that our businesses know. So we'll continue to establish those relationships with our businesses throughout the county and guide them and help them when those come about. And so that's kind of the overall. When you look at kind of getting into the water side of it, the infrastructure kind of begins on page 22. I was hoping that this would be a little bit broader, but it's not as broad as I wanted it. Obviously, you can spend the funds. It's infrastructure in water and sewer, and then the broadband. When I look at some of our projects and projects needs here, there's two projects that are coming up specific to water. We have the opportunity to participate in a study that's going to be just outside of Moab in the wetlands area next to the river. The Spanish Valley Special Service District water shares requires us to always monitor and maintain safe water yields in that aquifer. That aquifer also feeds into that wetland area. And so there's a lot of concern, a lot of unknowns with the wetland, what feeds it, how much water is coming in, fresh spring water is coming in, how much fresh spring water is going out into the Colorado River, what is the effect of the Colorado River on that. There's a brine layer in that aquifer that needs to be monitored and understood. So this study will kind of take all of that whole entire wetland area, add some monitoring wells with it, and just get a little bit closer look of what's going on so that we can understand how the water affects that wetland area. So there's one study that would like to participate in, more to have a seat at the table than anything, but where it does impact our water shares, we want to understand it, and we want that knowledge and understanding of that. You also have a request for a water study to take place in LaSalle. LaSalle, you're seeing a lot of growth. This is, to me, I liken this to Spanish Valley a couple of years ago, where you're starting to see a lot more development in LaSalle area. We need to understand that water and start to try to figure out, do we need a special service district there to help manage the water up there? Your same concerns that you have in Spanish Valley aquifer, you'll have in LaSalle. It's the same watershed. Well, different sides of the mountain watershed, same drought conditions throughout, but you have growth that has kind of been exponential there in both areas. And so with that study, we're looking at being able to help them with that study to get an engineer in here to try to begin that first stages of a special service district in the LaSalle community, that LaSalle area. So there's two kind of clean water projects that we can look at. Obviously, we'll try for the CIB funds for the storm water aspect of it, recovery system for that Spanish Valley aquifer system, but through CIB. But know that there's a couple projects that we can definitely highlight as being water projects, where this also allows for sewer. When you think of, for me, I think of the landfill right now. They continue to work in porta potties, so you have staff working there every day in a landfill environment that doesn't necessarily have hot water, clean restroom facilities in there. And so that's one of the things that you could look at, as well as an opportunity to use these funds to assist in that area. It's a little bit more of a stretch, but I think it's still applicable when you look at a sewer or restroom facility in a government area. But it's pretty specific in here that that you cannot use these funds for roads or bridges, which is unfortunate. We were hoping that the infrastructure funds could be used for that, but it does not allow it. It does allow for obviously the broadband. Broadband, as we get broadband down through our county, you also see those internet providers offer opportunities for sign up at discount rates, kind of a grant program through the federal system. It seems like everybody right now that offers internet to any household, whether it's satellite, phone, or direct cable, they have opportunities for low-income families, connection, discounts, things like that to get more internet out to our homes. And so I don't know if this is something necessary for us as the federal government. One of the things in here that we cannot partner with is the federal government. Federal government has graciously taken care of San Juan County in their broadband throughout the county as we continue to finalize this first phase and enter into the second phase.
More than one internet provider south in the county?
Your cell phone.
Is it pretty much just Emory Telecom?
So you've got, no, there's another one. And I don't know all the names. There's a dial-up that we use at the landfill that's not a Frontier based or an Emory. You've got satellite that you can get internet off of, as well as your cell phone services, your cell phone service providers. If you're in an area, and that's the hard part here, is if you're in an area where you have good cell phone coverage, then you can get a discount on their internet. Some of the difficulty when you look at going further south, for me, what I would see if you have a multi-generational household, it's usually like your parents will sign up for internet. Your kids can't get a discount. So if you have a grandparent signing up for a discount on internet, the parents wouldn't be able to sign up for it as well on their phone system. It only allows for one per provider per household. And so they're kind of seeing some issues with that, where parents may have one internet, but a college student will need something different. But yet the college student won't qualify because of that one parent
Right.
per household type offering. And so they're working through that, but there's a lot of companies that are currently out there offering hookup discounts to residents throughout the state.
I heard some concerns from parents in the South that their children couldn't get on the internet to do their schoolwork. The hotspots weren't working, and I just wondered if they'd been able to solve any of that.
Yeah, it does in part, but I think if you're still experiencing that problem now down to the south, and they don't have reliable access to that service, and you're seeing a great effort by UNHS and UETN going out and establishing more towers throughout the area to offer better internet throughout the county. And this is something that the school districts worked on along with Utah Native Navajo Health System, knowing that now you can telehealth, and it's trying to get more telehealth capability to homes. So hopefully that infrastructure comes in to play where we can offer it more to our citizens. But we're definitely throughout the county, if you were to rely on cell phone service alone, it wouldn't happen. I mean, just alone here in this meeting, you've had Commissioner Maryboy drop off probably four times, within the last couple hours. And so, even he's right outside of Bluff, just the cell phone coverage isn't there.
But I've heard that there was an internet company working with Navajo Nation to get broadband to Navajo Mountain right now.
So I don't know specific. All I know is on our side of it, the Utah Navajo Health System. And so you're seeing that today as a letter of support or a resolution to support Utah Navajo Health Services installation of that tower on Navajo Mountain, so that they can get that in there specific to Navajo Mountain. But and that'll offer them a lot greater access directly to that side of the mountain. And so, I don't know if that's the one or if there's another one. I know that was the only one that I know of.
I talked to one of the workers who told me he was out to Navajo Mountain that day helping install broadband, and it was a contract with Navajo Nation.
Okay. Commissioner Gray Eyes may have more experience with that one.
I've seen the Jones and the Mills drawing design plan. The tower will be situated on the north end of the mountain. So the direct signal to the health clinic will be as the crow flies, so to speak. And Navajo Mountain chapter has passed a resolution approving it. And our health board member, Gordon Fulgrader, is, I believe, on top of it. He's the one that requested. So things are going along pretty well.
Do you know if they're doing a direct burial broadband line up there, or is it just that tower?
Well, the tower, and I think it's going to be, what do they call it? The broadband hasn't come to the mountain yet, so.
Okay. So it's microwave.
So that's, yeah.
Okay. Other than that, that kind of gives you just kind of a cursory look, but I do agree with you. I printed off the state. The state kind of dropped their funds into buckets of allocation throughout the state, millions of dollars in different buckets, and I printed that out and haven't had a real good opportunity to go through and digest it. But as we were made aware of at UAC by the Speaker of the House and Speaker of the Senate, both kind of alluded to that fact that they're wanting counties to participate, but it also gives an opportunity for counties to participate with cities and towns as well. And so I think the expenditure of this is, there's an opportunity for kind of a collaborative effect, try to get a bigger bang out of our dollar, make it go further to meet the community's needs, as well as our own internal government needs. So other than that, we'll just stand ready. I'll bring, we do have additional CARES Act funds that are available that we need to spend, and anticipated bringing those back at a later, when we go through and make our budget adjustments for the year, our mid-year adjustment. We could bring those back at that time, but do know that we do have CARES Act funds that are still available, and as long as we're still applying the CARES Act fund rules with that, then we can make those expenditures going forward. There continues to be needs that we have that are applicable to the prevention and mitigation of COVID in the county, that we can apply those funds to make sure that we have those spent down. Those have to be all spent down by December 30th, 2021. So about 6 months to go for the remainder of those funds. But other than that, that's all I have. Unless you have any questions for me.
Looks like none.
Okay. All right. Other than that, what was that? Go ahead.
Stay on this line for the meeting.
So yeah, our next meeting would be at 11. So that'll give you, if we adjourn now, that'll give you 15 minutes.
On this same,
It's a different login.
which I don't have.
Okay, I'll send it to you. It was in that packet that Anne Marie sent it to you. I'll send it to you real quickly so you can click on it. We'll get everything to go. All we need is a motion to adjourn work session.
Hereby adjourn the meeting.
Motion. Motion to adjourn the work session.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All right. Any discussion?
Is he asking for a second?
There being none, all
discussions?
those in favor,
Second.
yes, I realize.
I can't hear him.
Motion made by Mr. Maryboy, second by Mr. Adams. Call for the vote. All those in favor say
Aye.
Aye.
Aye also. Opposed? None. 3 in favor, 0 opposed. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
All right, we have
shall see you all in about 12 minutes.
we have 15 minutes, and I'll send that to you.
Thank you.